right, let's move into Showdown of the Gods. Now, as you can appreciate, we can't cover everything in detail. That was quite obvious. One thing I want you to take away from this next seminar is there's going to be a showdown of the gods, and you'll see how that unfolds. All right. Sir Arnold J. Toynbee, great British historian, University of London teaching there, wrote a mammoth set of books called A Study of History, where he examined 21 world civilizations down through time, the Aztecs, the Chinese, the Incas, and so on, analysing these world civilizations. Not sure why we have a problem there with that one on the screen there. All right, you'll have to get your attention over here. Now, I want you to notice what this historian said as he examined these world civilizations and what is happening through time. The fundamental conflict is not political, but it's religious, he said. The line cuts across the inward spiritual world within every living soul today. Whatever label of political citizenship may have been stamped on its body by the accident of birth. What is he saying? Toynbee is saying, listen here, the real issues in many conflicts are not political ones, they are religious ones. You think of recent international conflicts and just think about it. Northern Ireland was between Protestant, Roman Catholic at its core. In Bosnia, Serbia and Croatia, Muslims, Orthodox and Catholics involved in that conflict. Terrorism, much of it, not only, but extremist Muslims today. Kashmir, it's about Muslims versus Hindus and so on in that part of the planet. And then, of course, in Israel and the Middle East, it's about Orthodox Jews and US Protestants, because that's one of the reasons even Bob Carr explained to the Australian public on a national television program why the United States is involved in supporting Israel against supporting the Palestinians, is because of a belief among Protestants about Israel and so on, and Muslims. So you notice, in all of these conflicts, Toynbee was right. Now, in the book of Revelation, John makes it very plain that Earth's final events will impact on the spiritual sphere of life. He talks about that in the book of Revelation. Now, John in Revelation chapter 17 sees a prostitute riding on a scarlet-coloured beast. She's called Babylon the Great. You will notice what it says here in John's Apocalypse. He says, "And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, and on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots or prostitutes, and of the abominations of the earth." Now, who is this Babylon the Great? She's made up of three parts in the Bible. Notice what John tells us. Now, the great city, Babylon the Great, was divided into three parts, the three parts that make it up. And great Babylon was remembered before God. So what are the three parts of Babylon the Great? What are these three parts? In one of the plagues John describes under the sixth plague, he explains who this Babylon the Great is. Notice what he says. "Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared." Now, what is going on here, you wonder? Well, you remember when we were looking this morning at Babylon, we noticed that a king called Cyrus the Great dried up the Euphrates River when he conquered literal Babylon in the Old Testament time. Remember that? He lowered the riverbed. He dried up the river Euphrates, and he was able to conquer Babylon, we saw this morning. John is taking Old Testament stories in many occasions, and he's giving them a global twist in the end times. He wants us to remember the principles of the stories and apply them to our time in which we're living in now. Now, you remember that the great city of Babylon stood on the river Euphrates. It was the lifeblood of the city of Babylon, that river. So when you read Euphrates, John is telling us, think Babylon. The three parts that make up Babylon the Great are these. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon. We've identified that. Justin did that this morning, a couple of sessions ago. Out of the mouth of the beast. That's the beast that comes up from the sea. And out of the mouth of the false prophet, there's a beast that comes from the land. In the middle of Revelation, chapter 13 and 14, we have this great battle with the 3 parts of Babylon the Great. There is a dragon. Ultimately, we saw this is the devil and Satan and those powers that are obviously aligned with him. But then he sees a sea beast. We are going to identify the sea beast very clearly in our Secrets of Prophecy seminar, as we're going to identify the land beast. These 3 powers John calls Babylon the Great. Now, I want you to notice what happens in the final battle for global worship or allegiance. Your allegiance, my allegiance, the allegiance of everybody on planet Earth. That's what John is talking about. Notice what it says. These 3 powers all combine to call Babylon the Great. These powers seek global worship or allegiance in the end of time. John says these words, and all the world, Lyle just referred to it, all the world marveled and followed the beast. That's the one from the sea. So they worshipped who? The dragon, Satan, who gave authority to the beast. And they worship the beast. And then he says these words. So, we'll go on to those words in a moment. But you can see what's happening in the end times. Most people on planet Earth are going to give their allegiance or their worship to Satan. That's why these things are in this book. Because if we end up worshiping the dragon, we lose eternal life. And that's why John unfolds for us who these beast powers are and what they're up to, and that's why we have this seminar that's coming where we can identify them very clearly for you. So most people give their worship. How does Babylon the Great achieve global worship? How come everybody's going to worship the devil? Are they going to sort of kneel down before the devil and say, we love you? No, it's going to be more subtle than that. Notice what John says. Let's go to it. He says, number 1, the sea beast, so the land beast I should say, enforces the beast's mark by economic pressure. That's what he tells us in a very quick nutshell. The land beast is going to enforce the beast's mark on everybody. If you take the beast's mark, you are signing up with allegiance to the beast or worshipping the beast. Let's put it up here. He says, he, the land beast, causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. See the point he's doing here, what he's saying. The second way he does this, so he not only enforces a beast mark, and if you don't take it, economic boycott, but he also says deceptive miracles to create an image of the beast take place. Let's notice what John says. He, the land beast, exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and he causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, the sea beast, whose deadly wound was healed. We'll understand that in the seminar too. He performs great signs. That's the word for miracles. He performs great signs so that it even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of the men. Now, if you've ever read something about this book, you will have realized that in the Old Testament times of Israel, sometimes they worshipped Baal, a Phoenician god, and there was a showdown on Mount Carmel on one occasion, and Elijah called down fire to consume his sacrifice on his altar that he built, and fire came down. Now, John is saying that in the end times, this power will cause fire to come down, but it's not from God, because what happens? He deceives those. It's a lie. It's a deception. He deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs or miracles which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast. Now, even Paul warned of deceptive miracles in the end of time. Let's notice what Paul said as we near the end of time. The coming of the lawless one, that's his subject, his name for Antichrist, is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish. Why do they perish? Because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. So John and Paul agree here. These miracles, deceptive signs and wonders, lead people astray. Now, signs and wonders to deceive the whole world. Are we seeing this sort of thing taking place in our world today? Is it happening? Now, we're not going to spend much time on this, but I want to just point your attention to a few things that are happening in our planet today. You think of Hollywood today. Secular Hollywood has been pouring out more and more films on the supernatural and sort of miraculous things than you've seen before in the last 30, 40 years. Some of the films they've put out, occultism, supernatural, ghost, witch, and Blair Witch and so on, Harry Potter, all these things in the magical area. This is not an accident. We are moving in a time in world's history where people are thinking some interesting things. How about New Age channeling and astrology? It's around us here in Hobart, let me tell you. A lot of it going on in the world today. It has increased dramatically in the last 30 years, the column centimetres. A lot of things taking place in the area of the supernatural in signs and wonders. Even in Christianity today, there are many healings and prophecies taking place. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe in healings. My own father was healed of a malignant melanoma. I'm all for healing, but it's not all coming from God. And that's what John is warning us of. Let's notice what he says. Jesus Christ warned of deceptive miracles as we near the end. He said, "Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord," they're followers of Jesus, "have we not prophesied in your name and cast out demons in your name? We did this through you." What will he say? "And done many wonders in your name. Then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness." Now, right there, my friends, this afternoon is a very good warning for every one of us. Just because you see a miracle does not mean it's coming from God, evidently. Because they're going to be used in the end time, John says, and Jesus says, to deceive people. So we obviously need to be very careful, and that's why we need to be students of this book, in actual fact, because it helps us to wade our way through a minefield of what's taking place today. So global demonic deceptions. And what happens through these things? They are led, the world is led to what we call the battle of Armageddon. You see, most people, when they see a sign or a wonder, a miracle, say, wow, it must be coming from God. Not necessary, says John. Even the demons work miracles, he said. "I saw 3 unclean spirits," here it is, "like frogs. They came out of the mouth of the dragon. They came out of the mouth of the beast, the sea beast. They came out of the mouth of the false prophet." That's the land beast, because he causes fire to come down and deceive people, so he's a false prophet. That's why he's called the false prophet. "For they are spirits of demons performing tricks." No, performing miracles. Right there we have a very clear warning for our world today. Be careful what you see, because it's not all coming from God, the signs and wonders, which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And they gathered them together in the Hebrew place called what? Armageddon. There it is. See, deceptive miracles ultimately to destroy people in the battle of Armageddon. The devil lives for 2 things, Jesus said. Deception for destruction. He's a liar and a murderer. And that's what he's up to in the end of time. That's why God, who loves everybody and can see that everybody is in danger, he sends 3 messages. Just like there are 3 beasts who are seeking to get global worship for the devil, 3 angels are sent. And John shares with us the first angel's message. We're not going to go into all of them. You'll have to come to the seminar. Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven. I'm so glad that heaven is interested in earth. The angels are in a hurry here. The angels flying in the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, "Worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and the springs of water." There was the call to worship the beast and the false prophet and the dragon. God calls us to worship him. You see, there's a conflict over worship here in the end of time, a spiritual conflict. That's very clear in the Bible. Worship God as the creator, says the angel. All the world one day, John says, will marvel and follow this beast. So how do you and I go against the crowd? That's the most important question we can answer right now. You'll understand who the beasts all are and so on very clearly as we go in deeper in the seminar. But today, what do we need to go with? How do we go against the crowd? Even if you don't know about the beast, if you follow this, you'll be okay. All who dwell on the earth, right in the middle of this prophecy of the 2 beasts, the one from the sea, the one from the land, it says, all who dwell on the earth will worship him. That's the sea beast, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. There's the solution, my friends, this afternoon. That's the way out. In other words, John is telling us, if we have our name in the Lamb's book of life, we will not go along with the crowd. We will be secure. In other words, the question is, how do you get your name in the Lamb's book of life? Well, we could say a lot of things, but I think we ought to cut right to the chase. John puts it in his little letter, "He who has the Son has life. He who does not have the Son does not have life." If we have Christ, our name goes in the book of life. That's what he's saying. If we have Jesus, if we ask him to take control of our lives, we're okay. We accept Christ by faith. We say, "God, I need your help. I need Christ." But names can actually come out of the book of life. That's one thing we ought to understand. John makes that very plain in his book. He says, if anyone shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, the book of Revelation. In other words, if people don't follow what it says, God shall take away his part out of the book of life. So now the question is, how do you keep your name in the Lamb's book of life? You know how to get it in there. How do you keep it in there? How does it stay in there? Here is Jesus' answer. Abide in my love. In other words, stay with me. If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments, and I abide in his love. That's the solution. Little wonder that when we see this great final battle of global worship, it begins and ends with 2 interesting statements in this showdown of the gods that follows. There's like 2 bookends on a bookcase, and in between is the great big battle, but on each end there's a bookend. Notice what the bookends are. It says, the dragon, this is the beginning of the battle, the dragon was angry with the woman. God's people went to make war with the remnant of her seed who keep the commandments of God. And they have the testimony of Jesus. They are faithful to the writings of the prophets. Last part, when we come to the end of this great big battle over global control, global worship and allegiance, it ends with this verse. Here is the patience of the saints, God's friends. Here are they that keep the commandments of God, and they have the faith of Jesus. That is the solution to you and I. We may not know everything about the details. It's very important that we do. That's why we're having the seminar. That's why it's in this book. But if we have our name in the Lamb's book of life and we follow Christ, we have nothing to be afraid of. What a great message that John gives us. That's the heart and soul of John's prophecy there.